So here's a question I get, or we get all the time, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. So let's just put it out there and maybe try to handle it one last time. What is the best meal for post-workout recovery / gains? How do we even get there, man?
My answer is going to surprise you.
Oh, I'm listening.
It depends.
Yeah, that's so surprising. It obviously depends, but look, people are asking this question because oftentimes they've just started a workout program, or they're finally maybe trying to take it seriously, and they found some consistency, and they've gotten to a point like, shit, I'm really doing this, and I'm seeing maybe this result. They lost a little weight. They're starting, their physique's changing a little bit. And they're like, maybe I should address this nutrition thing. Or they have been addressing the nutrition thing, and they've spent some money somewhere, like on some, protein powder. They're putting in some supplements in, and they're seeing people do that around the gym. And so
it's always before the nutrition though, right?
Yeah.
The supplements is the first thing. Right. Got to get that protein powder.
Right. And so
That's the secret.
they're asking that question. So like I'm taking and then it's usually followed up with, I'm doing this shake, or I have this protein powder. So let's cover it, right? First off, it does not have to be a shake or a drink. Those are convenient as hell.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But they're also not necessarily as effective as hell. So let's talk about post-workout nutrition.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's
look at the needs, right? And the needs across your diet over a whole day. And then which of those needs we're trying to cover immediately post-workout. Well, obviously we need some protein. We've just gone to the gym. We've just created some damage to our muscles. And so we are in a state of protein breakdown. We need to feed up with amino acids so that we can start that recovery and repair process. Usually what's recommended next is some kind of carbohydrate. And I do agree with that because we have depleted our glycogen stores while we were training. It makes sense to try to fill them back up. Now, it's not super urgent. We don't need to hurry and fill up our glycogen stores to their max.
It's a 24-hour thing, right?
And it's a 7-day week, and it's a 30-day month, so it's a continuum, right?
If that one meal is not refilling your whole stores of glycogen.
No,
that's important.
No.
It's more about dampening the cortisol response to training and getting back to a parasympathetic state.
Correct.
Right?
Just like one meal is not going to ruin your training or ruin your dietary success. Yeah. It's also not going to turn it around for you or make everything better.
Correct. Yeah. So like Jeff touched on there is we are trying to switch from the sympathetic, the stimulated state that we were in when we were training, to now a parasympathetic, which for those who don't know is the opposite of fight or flight. It's rest and digest. We're trying to switch back to that. And so one way that helps that is getting a good spike in insulin. Insulin having an inverse relationship with cortisol being the stress hormone.
So important that people understand this at least at a little bit of a little bit of a level. Basically understand insulin sensitivity and how important that is, and how much of our population is not insulin sensitive.
Oh God.
No, insulin resistant.
They're insulin resistant at this point. I mean, what do we got? 75% or something like that of people are pre-diabetic at this point.
Dude, kids have fucking coming out with type 2 diabetes. Kids. It used to be adult onset, right?
Yeah.
It's a sad state. So if your body doesn't respond to this insulin, or doesn't have this insulin response that Caleb's talking about, there's a lot of things we need to work on to improve that.
Correct.
And what you're doing after your workout won't fucking matter. We're splitting hairs at this point. We have a lot of other work to do to make that a priority. So anyhow,
well, because Caleb, you're really focused on building muscle, right?
Correct.
So why would reducing cortisol be important?
Well, one, cortisol is, again, a sympathetic hormone, and so it's going to drive you into a state of muscle protein breakdown. Catabolism, right? And I mean, that's the state we're putting ourselves in forcibly when we train too. You're not building muscle in the gym. You're breaking muscle down in the gym. The reason that we do it is because we're also creating a stimulus that lasts for a long time. The breakdown doesn't have to last for a long time. So if we eat something after we train, something that has amino acids, something that spikes our insulin a little bit, the insulin will drive cortisol back down, and it will drive the carbohydrates and the proteins, the amino acids, into the muscles
where they need to go.
Yeah. And so we get cortisol down, we get into a nice rest and digest state, which primes us for building new tissue and recovering. And we get those substrates that we need, amino acids and carbohydrates for energy metabolism, into the muscles that we are now trying to repair and grow.
Beautiful.
So I do recommend that the carbohydrates you use, I'm always going to talk about digestibility because, especially from my perspective as somebody who periodically throughout the year has to shovel in more food than I want to grow. We want foods that are going to digest well, for lack of a better word, something that's going to go through you smoothly, not cause any like bloating or disruption or digest too slowly.
So that is very individual.
Yes.
Which again goes back to the word, it depends, right?
In this context, however, this is one time that I'll say most people probably want to pick something that digests very well, because when you get home from training, you're probably still in more of a sympathetic state, which means your body is not really prioritizing digestive processes. And so you're not going to digest that first meal, for lack of a better word, like as well as you might something else where you're already kind of,
so you want something that's really going to digest quickly for you.
Yeah, quickly, and that doesn't take a lot of work to digest, if that makes sense.
So it makes perfect sense. And anybody that's ever done anything, any kind of like an endurance event, say like an Ironman or a long duration endurance event, knows what that gastric distress feels like when you're putting in too many calories, or you're putting in the wrong kind of calories into your system mid competition. And this isn't something that you can just go, well, then I just won't eat. You can't do that.
You need to.
You can't go 3-4 hours or whatever. I've done multi-day events where you're basically your calories are coming from liquid or very, very soft digestible foods, because your digestive system shuts down.
Absolutely.
It's not a priority while you're working out. And what you're saying is there's a lag time before it switches back on.
Correct.
To get into this rest and digest space.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to put something in there that your body's going to receive well and deal with well, effectively and efficiently, at least in the short term. This doesn't go on for hours.
No.
Right? This goes on for minutes to hours.
Well, again,
to an hour.
It depends on what you're doing
and
after
the person.
you train.
And the person.
If you're going home and eating and then laying on the couch.
Good point.
But if you're now going to work, you worked out in the morning, you're going to work, and you're going to be in a higher stress environment or higher state of arousal. That is, arousal is in like your brain's working. Then you've still got cortisol high and you're in this sympathetic state. And so it depends. It may be harder to get yourself back into that rest and digest process than it would be for somebody who's, going to lay on the couch and go to bed.
Right. Yeah. So again, not only does it matter to you as an individual in terms of what your gut health is, what your body digests well, the type of diet you've chosen to use for your dietary success, whatever that is. And what I mean by that is like, are you on maybe one or the other end of the spectrum? Are you all carnivore, or are you vegan, right? Or are you somewhere in the vast middle of what that looks like, and how does your body respond to the food that you're putting in it?
Correct.
Right. And then also, so that's the food itself, right? And it's never all about food. It's never success, dietary success,
entirely.
Gains, muscle gains, performance. It's never all about the food we eat. This is a component.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is this, how is your body responding to the food that you're putting in it from a physiological perspective outside of digestion and absorption.
Right.
Right. So you're making a good point. So like if you're running from the gym straight to the office, right, to take a 1 hour Zoom call with your boss or whatever else, this could be a prolonged process for you.
Correct. Sure.
Right. Versus somebody that's like, okay, I came out, you're a shift worker or whatever, and you've come off your shift, you go straight to the gym, and then you get time to do whatever. You have your routine of, night workers tend to do this. I've seen this, especially with like nurses and cops, right? A lot of times, or firefighters too. The firefighter shifts are really fucked up, but they'll get off shift and they'll come straight to the gym, and they just know, I need to get it done, because now I need to go home, I need to eat,
and then go to bed.
I need to sort of prep and do something like a normal person, right? And then I got to go to bed. I got to go to sleep. So it's a little bit of a different process depending on where you are. And so the answer to the question, those things can be big factors as well.
Because some people might need a shake. Some people might need an actual meal. But the big thing also, because we're talking about post-nutrition, right? If you're eating like 5 minutes directly after, like you have blood all in your gut, big thing, gut issues coming, like you might all of a sudden have an autoimmune to like spinach. You had a spinach salad right after you work out, you have leaky gut, a little protein gets in there. And now every time you eat spinach, you have a fucking autoimmune disease. So it's more about also letting the gut, letting the blood flow, relax. And then like Caleb's saying, like if you need to digest that, have something that's quick, cyclic dextrin with some protein in a shake, and then you can have a meal later. Right. Or because having that big meal, like having that big meal right after, for me, I know that I've had a lot more distress in my gut trying to get meals later on in the day.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm using the shake and I wait 30 or 45 minutes, drink that, I feel like I have a better digestion.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I've experienced similar things along my journey as well, through in and out of gut issues for various reasons. What I'll say is this, like, I always like the shake idea post workout, because I'm always kind of moving from workout into the next thing, and it stops the delay of getting that food in, that I know I need to get in.
Sure.
And I think the nuance to this is also, like, when I hear people ask me this question and go back to the person that's generally asking it, like, I'm finally taking this stuff seriously, or I really feel like I'm in a good groove, and I want to make sure I'm bolstering the efforts right through the nutrition piece. The next thing is about the protein. Like we already talked, the protein's important. It's important all the time, not just now. And I see people like that are already severely under eating protein and not meeting their protein needs, trying to take this like, well, now I'm using a protein shake, so I'm getting my protein. And when they're still under consuming their protein, and they're getting like 40% of their protein for the day in that one shake, right? Because they can put 2 big scoops in or whatever, and they think that they're doing all right. So let's talk about the protein shake for a second.
Okay.
When I say protein shake, I just say we're mixing protein with whatever you're mixing it with. I'm not going to get into any of that stuff, but you're putting that protein in there. Let's talk about the realities of protein powder for a second, right? And the efficiency and the effectiveness of that powder as you're putting it into your system, particularly post-workout. So I'm just going to lead this off with, we already know that when let's say you take that 40 gram scoop, right? Or when I say that, 40 grams of protein, not 40 grams in the scoop. Right. So you put 2 scoops.
We're not weighing powder.
Yeah. Most protein powders are somewhere between like 18 and 25 grams a scoop. Yeah. Right.
Correct.
So,
exactly.
So easy numbers. It's 20 grams a scoop. So now I got 14 or 40 grams of protein in this concoction, whatever.
Big gains.
Whatever my concoction is. Now, there are a lot of things that go into how well your body can or will use the protein that you're putting in. So yes. So effectively, we're looking at something like, if we're looking at a whey protein, it's most commonly known. We know that the bioavailability of that whey protein, depending on how it's processed, where it's coming from, is pretty good. It's pretty good. Bioavailability, meaning your body's ability to actually absorb it. And use it.
So absorb and assimilate.
Because it can absorb it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be utilizing it, right? And that's individual.
It's a hard one to...
It is.
It can be dependent on the type of protein that you're getting, how that protein was processed, and then obviously you as an individual, right? As it's going through that hollow tube that goes from your mouth to your anus, how much is actually being pulled in there and how much can it actually be utilizing? So just because you're putting 40 grams in your protein shake doesn't mean
40 grams are going into your
40 is going in there for a multitude of reasons. So when you think about this, like, so just load it up, more protein, more is better. No, and I'm not even going to get into, so that is not true. And I'm not even going to get into like how much how much protein can your body actually absorb? This debate will go on for fucking ever.
Never know.
And we'll never know because it's all very individual and there's too many factors.
And if you want to, the nitpicking is just,
it's stupid. We're splitting hairs. And it's an impossible question to answer. So at the end of the day, like, the protein shake can be effective for a lot of people. And Caleb and actually, Jeff, you did it. You said it too. Just depends on kind of where you're at in your own health, where you're at in your life and your lifestyle, and how
hard are you training? Like,
where this fits in. I think the overview to this is where you went back to that, or going back to that, the sort of the formulation, Caleb, is, first off, we need to get some protein in there.
Correct.
Secondly, we need to get some carbohydrate in there.
Correct.
The types that you're getting could vary. And they certainly could impact how effective those things are. So what else should be in that post-workout meal? We just talked carbs and protein. Is that it? Or should we have fats in there as well?
I'm going to say those are the most important on a base level. Now, whether or not you want to include fats or specific nutrients is really going to depend on your total diet throughout the day. Because there are a list and quantity of each nutrient that we want to be consuming on a regular basis. And so if you're not getting certain nutrients in other meals of the day, it may make sense to include them there. I'm a big fan of throwing a little bit of fruit in my post-workout meal, because there's tons of nutrition packed in there, along with, some more starchy, easily digesting carb, like usually cream of rice. Again, something that gets through me very effectively. That again, personal preference. As far as fats, again, it depends. What are your total fat needs for the day? There are some people who think that you don't want to have fats post workout.
It's a big like in every nutrition they're talking about pre and post very low fat.
The reason for that, the reason they say that is because fats do slow down the digestion of everything else that you consume along with it. So when you consume a meal, all that food mixes in your stomach, right? It gets churned into chyme, and then it starts to go through in individual boluses through your intestine. So the more fat is in that bolus of food, the slower it will digest and absorb. So that's not a big deal. I mean, as long as you're not putting like a ton of fat to the point where that meal is sitting in you for a long time. I have fats with my post-workout meal, but that's also just something I've found to work for me through trial and error. Exactly. I don't do it on purpose, and I also don't purposefully avoid it.
Well, because if you're eating meat, most meat has fat.
Has a little bit of fat,
right?
Yeah.
And so if you're somebody that has digestion issues, maybe you don't eat fat at pre and post. Right.
Yeah.
But you need, first of all, you need fat to live, right?
I think the bigger point to the question is let's go all the way back. It's what should I be doing post workout? My next question is, well, the first thing is like, before I even answer this question, I have about 75 other questions for you.
Yeah.
Right. And that would be, and you guys have just touched on them, which is, well, what are your total macro needs for the day?
Yep.
And how much are you eating now?
Right.
How much have you had to that point during the day?
Yep.
Is it the same all the time? Because if it's the same all the time, then maybe you're consistent and we can formulate a little post-workout meal that works best for you. But if it's not and you're inconsistent, then I can't answer that question for you.
Sure.
The best we can do to answer that question is you need protein, you need carbs, fats.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it, depending on what your needs are, where you're at for the day, how your digestive system works, all of those things. If you want to be really safe, just don't put them in there. Just make sure you get them somewhere else.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And know that within the carb and the protein amounts that you're putting in there, you just want to make sure that they're balanced with the other things that you're doing and having during the day and through the course of your week.
Yeah. Correct.
Right. And that's about the best we can answer that.
Yeah.
It really is. And then if you're consistent with that for a while, we might be able to answer it a little bit more specifically, but that's the basic recommendation.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of nuance to it, like you said, but at the end of the day, peri-workout nutrition is important for two reasons. Pre-workout, because that's going to affect your performance during the workout.
Blood sugar, right?
Correct. You need sugar to, train with weights, because weight training is anaerobic. But then post-workout, you want to, switch gears, so to speak, to a state of recovery. And so
that's why keto is not good for people who lift weights often, like CrossFit.
Keto is for people who are epileptic.
It's like a longevity. Like,
oh yeah, we could go.
I know, but like, dude, if you're lifting weights, you need carbohydrates to recover.
If you want to perform at your best, you fucking need carbohydrates.
I mean, it's an anaerobic exercise. You need that substrate to activate that energy pathway.
The argument you're going to hear is, well, my body
makes
my body will manufacture that, or it will change.
Yeah, and I see people do it, and they have muscle, and the body
will convert.
Measure your performance doing both, and tell me that your performance.
That right there, that word measure is the key word in all of this, because unless you're measured on anything, have any data,
I don't want to hear it.
I can't tell you what to do or give you a recommendation on what to do. It really is a best guess. Mm-hmm. And as far as my health, my training, my performance goes, I don't like doing that. That's that's not what I hang my hat on, and that's not how I've made.
Roger,
I can live with that.
That's not how I've made my career in this industry. So. Yeah.